Cool. Hey there, folks. I'm Patrick King here with my friend Colton Woods. And Colton, where are we at right now?
We're out here in Paris, Kentucky at Meta Haven Farms. This is where I call home during the week when we're not teaching clinics and lessons. And so Patrick stopped on by the way on his way back from B-Bar-C. So it's a pleasure to have you join us.
It's great to be here, Colton. Thank you.
This will be fun.
Yeah, so if you're checking in with us, be sure to tag your friends in the comments below, invite them to come join us on this conversation, and you'll catch us watching back and forth to both screens here as we're streaming both on our page here, Patrick King Horsemanship, and what's the name of your page, Colton?
Colton Woods Horsemanship.
Awesome. Yeah. Great. So again, invite your friends in the comments below. We've got some great questions. Looks like we've got 5 or 6 questions that have been posed to us from each of our pages. We're going to try to run through those first. And then if you've got any questions to add as we go, or you need any clarifications about some of the answers that we're going to give to the questions that we've already got, feel free, again, post those in the comments below, and we'll do our best to answer those for you. So, what do you say, Colton? I'll throw one at you, and we'll just kind of go back and forth. Does that sound all right?
That sounds good.
Cool. Okay. So Simone from Ohio has asked us, what do you do when your horse gives really quickly and deeply on the inside rein, basically dropping and avoiding all of the contact? Now, a little context here. I know Simone. Simone rides a fantastic little thoroughbred horse. So she's riding English. He's kind of a jumper, doing a little bit of dressage. So what do you think? It sounds like the horse is just kind of running behind her hand, maybe?
Yeah,
might be what I would call it.
You know, this is a problem that I'm sure you've seen quite a bit, and I've experienced with one of the horses I have in. And one of the best ways I can feel about doing it is that when they get that soft, it can kind of be a little worrisome because you've essentially lost connection with them. So you're trying to figure out how to get that connection back. And so the best way I've felt to go ahead and do it is just to follow them. And so as they come back, some horses in a really extreme case might go ahead and follow their chin back to their chest. And, you know, that might be just because they're looking for that release. And so they're going to keep searching back. But if you follow them back, and then when they get to that point to where their nose is just a little bit out in front and they're not behind the vertical, then that's where that release is. But if you start releasing when they get too deep, then that's going to be the spot. And so I'll follow them and then when they get to the spot that I'm looking for, then I'll go ahead and give them that release there. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times if they're doing vertical, if it's a vertical problem and they're happening vertical flexion and they're very straight, it helps to get them left and right and do a lot of lateral so that they're really using their whole body and their whole neck. And so that's kind of what I found, just really to follow them. Don't let them essentially have that release when they get all the way back too deep.
Gotcha. So, and that's pretty much the same experience that I've had and the same things that I would do with those horses. So they almost put themselves into that sort of psychological roll cure position, Absolutely. You know, that we talk about every now and then. And you see some riders kind of banging on their horses, putting them on purpose into that position. We're not going to call out any disciplines specifically for doing that. But you will find some horses that'll go there to find a release, right? And it is our natural response to say, oh, geez, no, I'm going to give that rein because I don't want him going there. But then he finds the release, you know, when he does that. So just as Colton said, what I would do with that is pretty much exactly the same thing. I'd follow him back there so that he doesn't find that release. So it's the job of our inside hand at that point to belong to our horse's mouth, essentially, and follow his mouth back wherever he goes until he starts to feel that urge to kind of push forward. Because again, he's hunting for the release back there. So when he doesn't find the release back there, then he's going to hunt for it someplace else. Yep. So he's either going to poke his nose forward or he'll buck you off. No, kidding about that part. No, that's not likely to happen. But, you know, as he finds that coming behind the vertical and avoiding the contact doesn't find him a release, then he's going to start to push forward a little bit in that neck. And I really liked what you said about about kind of the lateral work, a little bit of lateral bend, lateral work, maybe some leg yielding.
Yep.
I find that's really helpful also, particularly the leg yields, because in the leg yield it helps the horse to sort of reach a little farther behind with the hind leg, or farther in front with the hind leg, which is going to sort of soften and supple the top line. And the stiff top line, what I've found anyway, tends to be something that contributes to that horse avoiding the contact and kind of dropping everything out like that. So the softer they get, the more they have that tendency to reach forward through.
Absolutely.
So yeah, cool. Okay, so Simone, we hope that was helpful. And look at that, you got a bunch of stuff coming up on your side of there. I must not have any friends watching here. Nobody's commenting on my page.
I think they're all saying it sideways.
Are they seeing it sideways?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's still sideways.
Let's see. I don't know.
I wonder, you think we can turn that around?
Yeah, we might be able to.
See, guys, this is why we don't work for NASA.
Yeah, right, absolutely. Hold on, guys. We're going to see if we can get you turned around here. So, I don't know if this is going to be too
I
tight.
don't know if that'll be tall enough. Can we?
Might be able to.
Now they're getting a good view of your palm. And
Right, guys. Hold on 1 second.
So if you're watching on my page here while Colton's getting our technical difficulties figured out, be sure, comment in the comment section below, tag your friends, invite them out, particularly if any of these questions, there you go, that might work. If any of these question and answer ideas here might be helping you and your horse, be sure, like we said, tag some of your friends. Is that going to hold on there?
Might be a little top heavy. Hold on, guys. We'll get you straightened out here. Let's see. I'm trying to.
Ah! Okay. Let's see. Leslie is popping up on here. She says, "Colton, try restarting the feed."
Try restarting it?
Yeah, that's what she says.
Should we do that?
She's a lot more techie than both of us.
Guys, hold on a second. We're going to restart here.
Oh, ending live video.
That's sad.
Sad face. 5 minutes into it, and you're ending already. Wow, jeez.
There's 10 people, too. I think the problem is it's technology.
Hold it the way you want it to film and restart. It should do the trick. That's awesome, Leslie. Thank you so much for offering that help for us right there. I don't know. It still looks sideways.
Yeah, it's still going sideways.
Maybe can we angle it up against the fence here?
Yeah. Maybe might get the.
What if we stand it upright? And then it'll be upright?
Oh, yeah. That's the whole point of this, right? God.
Oh, jeez. We're trying to get it figured out. We promise. Yeah, but this is why we ride horses for a living. You know?
All right.
There we go. That's looking better, maybe. Okay, so Colton's getting this started back up again. We'll be back rocking and rolling here in a moment. 3, 2, 1, action. There we go.
Lord.
Take 2, right? Oh, Sonora, I'm glad you and Eddie are enjoying that. Yeah, this is funny. Thank you, guys. Yeah, just wait. You'll get it. Okay, we feeling all right?
We're feeling good.
Good. You've done a couple of these now, and you haven't had any major flaws like this. So this is awesome. I'm glad we get to experience this together.
Right. Already live. Like one thing when you're not live,
exactly.
But now it's going. So
yeah. There's no denying it now. Yeah. So, okay, guys. Now we're back. Yeah, we've got Colton live down here. So you're gonna see us kind of bouncing up and down camera to camera as we go here. So let's see. We've got Irene. Irene asked a question that I love this question. Irene says, how do you keep your horse's trust in your leadership when you're injured and you can't give clear aids? She says, or would it just be better to wait until you're all healed up? So what do you think about that?
That's a really, really good question. I guess it really comes down to like, how are you laid up? Can you not ride? Are you completely restricted to like not be around your horse and stuff like that? I guess going off that you can still maybe do some basic in-hand work, then I would I know Patrick has a lot of great exercises with the one-step exercises that you teach people and doing that. And so this is a relationship kind of thing, I feel like, in building that trust between each other, and that, understanding when you might need someone that's more handy or that's more capable, because you might be laid up to step in if something was to go a little pear-shaped per se. And so, I would stick with them. Like, being here by myself, I sometimes, things happen, and, you kind of have to keep going on with it. And I would really build on the groundwork kind of stuff, and really making sure those boundaries, they understand them. It doesn't have nothing. I feel like with the horses, Craig Johnson says that, it might be firm, but it's not harsh. So, I mean, if you feel like, oh, my horse is out of work now, and they might have a little extra energy, and you have to adapt your feed program to kind of suit what they're living through. I mean, are they in a stall all the time? Do they need as much grain as they're getting?
Right, if they're not burning the calories.
Exactly. So a lot of times, just the management of the horse. Sometimes, if what we're capable of doing changes, we have to also think about our horses and say, hey, they may not need as much protein and much energy, and we can that'll help them out a lot, because you feel for them just being in their stalls all the time, if they're not just getting much turnout. So I'd address that, but then I'd really channel on the groundwork. And I think doing stuff on the ground, I would keep after it. I wouldn't just back off completely. I would keep going and keep working with them, and maybe you can provide a little insight.
Sure. And I like what you said about kind of adjusting their calories when they're laid up. I know that's something I need to learn to do better for myself, is when I'm laid up, adjust my calories, because then maybe I wouldn't have to work so hard afterwards to get back to good. But I love this question, Irene, and thank you for asking that. And the frame of that question, I hope you're not too badly laid up. I hope you're not too seriously injured. Keep us posted. Let us know how you're doing. But at my own experience, I know I've had both of my legs broken now, and actually, maybe I shouldn't admit this, don't anybody tell my surgeons this, but continued starting colts, because at the time I had to, I had, bills to pay and that sort of thing, and that was my job. I had horses to work, so I was riding horses, starting colts, that sort of thing, with a broken leg. So I think it comes down to, like you said, how laid up are you? How bad is the injury? I don't recommend starting colts on a broken leg. It wasn't probably my wisest decision. We got through it fine, but if I had some horses that needed stronger leadership, I surely wouldn't have been starting those. The colts that I was starting were pretty quiet, easy horses to start. In that case, and Sarah's putting in a message here. She just broke her ankle yesterday, and she taught 6 lessons today. Well, she's a hard ass. Yeah, she's kind of tough. So we find out just how ibuprofen deficient we are whenever stuff like that happens. But the first time that I'd broken my leg, I had a trailer loading demo and a horsemanship clinic to teach just 3 or 4 days later. And it was interesting. I ended up, you talked about, maybe somebody needing to be a little more handy for you. I ended up having to use my crutches that I was on to kind of help me. I ended up, instead of a flag, I used one of my crutches kind of as a flag to direct this horse that was having trouble trailer loading. And I was just kind of hopping closer to the trailer as I was getting the horse more okay. It was kind of funny, and I'll never forget somebody saying, wow, imagine what he could have done if he had 2 good legs, and I remember thinking, geez, I'm sure glad that worked, By the end of it, I could sit up at the front of the truck and send the horse around, and she went into the trailer. But it was one of those things where I had to be sure of myself that I was handy enough to get that job done. So back to Irene's question about if you're injured and you can't give clear aids, again, I used my crutch as an aid. When I was starting those colts and my leg was broke, I didn't have, of course, the leg was broke. I didn't have any kind of strength or even energy in my lower leg when that happened, so I had to kind of accommodate that way. And the fantastic thing about our horses is that they're so accommodating to us. You know, they're so malleable, so adjustable, and thank heavens they're so forgiving also, that you know, I was able to start those colts and get them riding, and by the time I was back to good, they were right there anyway. Yeah. So I think, Irene, it's going to come down to, are you able to follow through with your supplemental aids? So as I talked about, you know, the trailer loading with my crutch was kind of a supplemental aid for the lack of direction and the lack of mobility that I had. So I think that's a big part of that.
Yeah, and I think just kind of going off the tail end of what you said about that would be being aware of the situation you're going to put yourself in with your horse, like knowing your horse and making a self-conscious decision of, if this doesn't go exactly according to plan, is it going to put me in a position where I get hurt more, or I can't work my horse through it because of my physical inability to be able to work through it? So we're always trying to set them up for success, whether we're healthy or not. But especially when we're limited on our capabilities, I'd be very in tune with, you know, if it was a trailer loading and, you know, my leg was broke maybe because of that same reason, and we're going to put him in the trailer, you might want to get some help for that, because you know your horse already has a problem, whereas maybe, you know, your horse is really good at certain exercises and you want to keep maintaining that and build on it a little bit at a time. I'd just be very aware of setting myself up for success and really evaluating what I'm capable of doing and what my horse is, where my horse is, because if we know they have a weak spot, we might break it down very, very little, because we know that we could only help them so much. So we want them to kind of take it in bite-sized pieces. So
Absolutely.
just a little add-on.
Absolutely. So I guess the question in that, you know, how do you keep your horse's trust in your leadership when you're injured? I guess kind of the punchline with that is, how much does your horse have to fill in? You know, how much does he have to be there for you, and how handy can you be in the interim,
right?
You know, in helping him for that. So again, Irene, I hope you're doing all right. Please let us know how you're doing. Let's see. Okay, another one here we got from Sheila. Sheila wants to know if we have any tips on gaining confidence when we're not in a position to ride on a daily basis.
Well, I'm going to be going off gaining confidence within ourselves, you know, rather than our horse gaining confidence. I mean, kind of from what I can take from this question. And so this is a really good question. I mean, there's a lot of people that were always looking at building confidence. You know, I'm not out at venting, you know, so that would be something that I would be, you know, looking at a 4.5-foot fence. I'd need to build some confidence to be comfortable taking some ponies over that. But
and you ride every day, you big chicken.
Right. So, you know, we all have those areas where we could build on some confidence. And if you're not able to ride every day, this would be something that, you know, I definitely need to work on. Patrick's really good at, but I'd be looking at going to the gym, or at least getting a bit of a workout in, and being very self-aware of building that muscle, so that when I got on there, if I'm not necessarily building muscle memory in the saddle, that at least maybe from a physical standpoint, I'd be staying fit, because, you know, life gets busy and not always accommodating to staying fit and stuff like that. And riding, it's a sport and it's very demanding, and our horses you know, we should be staying as balanced as we can. If we're not fit and we're only riding once a week, you know, we don't want to be bouncing around up there like a sack of potatoes, essentially. Right. So, I mean, that would be something. And then it depends on what your time allows, but I'm all about trying to read as much stuff from Patrick and other horsemen that are out there sharing educational content, and that a lot of times helps, because I might run across a situation, maybe not tomorrow, but maybe 6 months down the road, and I might just recall an article I read or a video I watched, and then I can kind of channel that, whatever I might have learned, and that really helps out for me, because I didn't need that tool right away, but it was in the back of my toolbox, and I can pull it out, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, that's fine too, because we can move on to the next thing. And, you know, when we start kind of guessing right a couple of times, it does feel good, because you know you're able to help your horse out. So I'd be expanding my education. You know, staying fit would be two real good things that I think would be that I use to build my confidence when I'm not able to ride. So.
Yeah, and I'm gonna throw in exactly those same tips. The more you know in your mind, the more mentally prepared you'll be for whatever that situation is that you're fearful of or worried about. And I like to think that confidence comes from knowing you can handle yourself in whatever situation you find yourself in. You can't always control the situation, right? That's life.
Yep.
But if you can handle yourself in that situation, and that's where things like your fitness come in. We think about a lot of the challenges that we have as riders in general. If we talk about equitation challenges, a lot of the problems that we have, the challenges that we have, come down to suppleness, strength, awareness, things like that. So things like Pilates, yoga, calisthenics, those sort of things I think are tremendous for riders in helping us to be able to better control our own bodies, which again, to me, that's where the confidence comes from, is knowing you can handle yourself in whatever situation you find yourself in. So
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let's see, and it's showing me on our page here that a few of you have shared our video with your friends, so that's fantastic. I'm loving that. Again, if these answers, if you find them helpful, be sure to tag your friends in the comments below, invite them out here, go ahead and ask some questions as as they come to you. And hopefully we've got a couple more questions here that have been asked ahead of time, and we'll be able to address those here shortly. So we've got a little clinic shout out here.
Yeah,
Colton, I'll
absolutely.
let you kind of get started on that one.
So we'll be going, I have the opportunity to go back to Kathy King's place it'll be in October later this year for a trail riding clinic. Kathy's where I got Teton, the gray horse that I've had the opportunity to kind of get a bit of a start with. So we're super excited. That's going to be in October later this year up at Valhalla Farms. And we're going to be doing a trail riding clinic. So we're really looking forward to joining Kathy and the crew up in Ohio and anybody else that can make it. So
that's awesome. And that's a beautiful area up there. If you guys get a chance, that's going to be a clinic definitely to make it to. It's a beautiful area. So and Valhalla Hill Farm, it's a beautiful place in itself. I know I'm fortunate enough. I'm going to be teaching a couple clinics there as well. May 26, 27, and September 29 and 30. I'll be teaching there. And another kind of offshoot about Colton's boy Teton. He is a Nakota horse, and I'm going to be teaching at the farm where the Nakotas are, at the ranch out there in Linton, North Dakota. We're going to be doing we're calling it the Nakota Experience. That is June 22nd to 26th. We've got that scheduled for. That's going to be pretty awesome. Hoping you can make it out there with us, because that'll be pretty cool.
That'll be fun. Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to be kind of touring around, seeing where the horses are in their natural environment, which is going to be a ton of fun. We're going to be able to kind of observe the herds and watch the herd dynamic, see how the psychology of the horses without human interaction works, building up to maybe gentling a couple of these horses. We might sneak in some other little experiences there. I know I'd love to maybe start one or two of them under saddle, show folks how that goes. It's going to be an experience, It sounds like a lot of fun. The area itself that we're going to be in sounds like it's really rich with a lot of history. The horses themselves are really rich with history, so it's going to be pretty neat. I'm really looking forward to that. So there's information in our events page. So if you folks are interested in that, we'll also be tagging the event page in the show notes, in the comments below, after this feed is over. So if you get a chance to make it out, it's really going to be a fun time.
Yeah, you guys won't want to miss that. That's going to be a great time if you can make it out there to join Patrick. So we sure hope we'll be able to. So,
that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, now I have one more here that was presented, one more question that was presented on my page. And Alla, great to see you there. You found your way to us. Natalie has a question that she has a horse that likes to brace his head and keep his rib cage stiff when she asks him to steer to the left or right when she's riding. When he's standing still, he's fine with lateral flexion and real soft with, moving his head and neck. But he braces more as she goes up in gait. So he braces some at the walk, he braces more at the trot, probably more, I'm guessing more even at the canter or the lope. So what do you think about this? This is something I think you probably see with some of the horses you get in training and some of the clinics.
You know, with the stiffness, particularly as you get faster, usually as you get faster, they get more stiff. And so it's definitely something I've kind of encountered. And with each horse, it kind of takes a little different feel. And sometimes what works with one doesn't work with the other. But where I'll normally start with mine is I like to start where the engine is. I like to start in the back. And so whether they're at the walk or the trot or the canter, depending on where the stiffness is, let's just start at the walk, I would ask for a lateral bend to the inside and ask them to disengage their hips across, and then we'll just walk on. And I'll keep going, and my goal is to really connect that rein to their feet and even to that back foot, so that when I go to pick up on that rein, when it's at a certain angle, then they start to roll across in the hind end and they stay super soft. If they're staying stiff, I just hold until they get soft, and each time they try, I'll loosen up and try to find that softness from the hindquarters to the rib cage to the shoulders and then on up. And so a lot of serpentines is what I really like to do with these horses, is really work from the back to the front, changing directions. And to start, it'll definitely be going to the left. Like, I'll just pick a direction because I want them to start to understand, like, to be predictable for them, that, you know, I'm not always changing. They're like, oh, I don't know what he's really asking me, because he keeps changing his mind. If one's that stiff and it's something that's fairly basic, then, you know, I'll keep going to the left, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, I know what he's asking me to do. And then you can kind of build their confidence and, you know, start rewarding that suppleness. And then as they go, I just take the same theory to the next gate as we keep moving up, because the speed as the speed gets faster, it's just going to amplify the problem that you have on a more basic level. If you're having the problem at the walk, you're not going to fix it at the canter. So I'll break it back down, find out. And sometimes we might think that they're just bracy at the canter, and so we're like, oh, we need to work on it there. We'll go back to the trot and see if they're bracy. If they're not, then there might be something more to it. It may not just be that exact issue, but I would take it a step back. And, you know, we really have to sometimes break it down into bite-sized pieces, and that's really fun for me because I get a lot of horses that have different sorts of vices on them, and so you really learn how far you can break things down to try to explain it to them. So as for a suppleness, I would start with the hind end and work my way up, and a lot of serpentines, and I'd start at the walk if you're already having trouble at the trot of the canter or something like that. So
Yep, that's fantastic. Pretty much what I would do too. You know, it's just, I'm getting a feeling here we've got some similar ideas. So this is pretty awesome. And kind of to add on to that, we would say that a horse that's bracing in their head and neck, rib cage, bracing in the neck or the head is kind of the body's natural protectiveness of the hind leg. You know, we think about the horse as a flight animal, right? As they tense up or as they get nervous, they're going to want to protect their flight mechanism, their hind legs, because, you know, as we know, the hind leg is the motor, that's the engine, and I'd say that's at least 70% of our steering is in the hind legs. So that's where I would go exactly where Colton's talking about. When the horse is bracing in the face, in the rib cage, I would isolate the hind quarters, because the hind leg is really where that issue comes from. You know, the face is where it expresses, right? The rib cage is where it expresses. The hind quarters is where it originates, you know? So the softer we can get those hind quarters, the softer the rest of the body's going to be.
And I think I've found too that if you find one that is stiff in the head and the neck, that at the same moments when you feel that they're stiff in the head and the neck, they're stiff in the hips as well. They're stiff in the hind quarter. They go hand in hand, whether you're in this under saddle or on the ground. If particularly on the ground, because you can really focus on the feel of the lead rope. When you ask one to bend around and to get to step across with their hind quarters, you'll notice that when they step stiff, that they'll also pull on that lead rope. Exactly. And so when you have those few start moments at the very beginning, that you'll feel that when they take a good, nice, clean step across, they also get soft.
Absolutely.
And so if you're having trouble under saddle, I'd also go up back to the ground and just kind of get a feel for it, because you can really actually get a physical feel on the lead rope and get to a more visual of what would be happening underneath you. But I found they do definitely go hand in hand.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. As they say, that's kind of the nature of the beast, And I really like your idea about the Serpentines, kind of breaking that horse apart, left hind leg, right hind leg, that sort of thing. That's going to be really important, I find, and maybe you found this too, and correct me if you haven't, or if you think it's different, but I think it seems to me that if we can get better control of the horse's hindquarters and their lower back, the softness through the lower lumbar, I find that we could prevent or solve probably 80% of our problems by having that in place, and that's where I think in dressage we talk a lot about riding the horse from back to front. If we can unlock the back end, the front end is going to be unlocked and more receptive for us.
Couldn't agree more.
So. Hello, Pam, down there in Tallahassee. It's great to see you on here joining us. And you've got, look at that, you've got some, what is that? Two insanely handsome guys. Is that insanely handsome? No, it doesn't say insanely. I just added that in there. Wow, added that in there. Okay. Well, they're catching our best sides, I think.
I think so.
So, let's see. And then you had a question come on here from Kathy. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy sent us a question from a live feed video that I did kind of spontaneously yesterday as I was working. An Appaloosa stallion, Oni or One Smart Ace. We went out to do some groundwork, and we had him at liberty per se, and then all of a sudden his work on the rail kind of came in, and it would be what you classify as a liberty horse. And as I was walking through it, one of the transition was asking him to change directions. And with that, you can do it facing the horse, or you can turn your back to them and change directions. And what ended up happening was she had noticed that I turned my back to the horse because the camera went away from the horse. And she asked me that she had been taught that you should never turn your back to a stallion, and so it's a very good question, because there are, even stallion or not stallion, mare, gelding, pony, whatever, there are just some of those horses out there that you shouldn't turn your back to, because they may not respect humans or whatever. They've been allowed to get away with certain behaviors, and it could be dangerous or threatening or whatever it may be. Addressing Kathy's question about this particular horse, I've had the opportunity to work with him for several months now, and I definitely wouldn't turn my back personally to a horse that I didn't trust. I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have put myself in a position, if I didn't feel safe, because we were out having fun yesterday, and so it was one of his days off, and so we were just out kind of seeing what he wanted to offer, put a little variety in his work, and so definitely wouldn't have been something I wanted to risk for turn my back. But as for horses in general, safety first. Know your horse, or at least if you don't know them, then take it with a grain of salt and get to know them and kind of see how they feel. And this particular horse, I have full confidence in him. I'm not going to give him, a mile and say, oh, he'll never do anything wrong, but it wasn't something in that moment. There might be times where any horse might be a little threatening, or they might challenge our leadership, but then that can be, with a counter move, we can go ahead and kind of say, hey, there is a pecking order, and this is my place and this is your place. But with that liberty stuff, that's just one of the maneuvers we did, and he did great yesterday, so that was a lot of fun.
That was pretty awesome. I saw that video. That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool. Yeah.
I don't know your thoughts on stud horses in general, or turn your back to them, or just working safely around them.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's any horse, right? Not necessarily stud horse, but stud horses tend to pose an extra challenge. I've heard some people refer to owning a stallion as like owning a pet rattlesnake, and actually growing up, I knew some friends who had some friends that raised reptiles, and they had rattlesnakes, and everything was fine. So somebody said, "Oh, it's like owning a pet rattlesnake." I thought, well, that seems easy,
right.
But one of the things that I tend to keep in mind is it's all about kind of the general predictability of each horse individually, but more than that, it's about the awareness of us.
Absolutely.
Right? I've seen more people beat up by mares than I have by geldings and stallions, and that's That's nothing against mares. I love mares. Nothing against stallions or geldings. It's just horses. That just happens to be the way the ratio has worked out, probably, that I've seen. It's definitely about the awareness of the person. People talk about, letting their guard down or relaxing or whatever. You can relax, but that doesn't mean you're clueless, right? I mean, I can relax driving down the road, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to pay attention to the traffic. That's where we can sometimes get foolish. And look, accidents happen, right? I think in general, the best advice that we could give, it's not never, it's not always, right? There's no answer with horses that would be never or always. Is like my friend Richard Winter says, he says everything works sometimes, and I like that thought, everything works sometimes. So with the stud horse or with any horse, it's about an awareness. If you know that horse is going to be challenging, and if Colton, had any inkling that horse was going to be a challenge in that moment, I'm sure you wouldn't have turned your back in that moment. You'd have sorted some things out and made sure that he was okay. And again, we mentioned earlier, it's the nature of the beast. Sometimes things just happen. Yeah,
I think self-awareness, is just absolute key. Self-awareness of ourselves, and then self-awareness of our horses, and being, because if we're always tense when you're always expecting something to go wrong, our horses aren't going to relax like you want. A little peace and serenity for them as well. But you have to be very calculate your risks and say, hey, you understand where this horse is coming from, maybe what its experiences have been, and what the position you're in and what you're putting the horse in, and
absolutely,
like you said, never and always.
Absolutely, and you've always got to, you've got to exercise good judgment. And Ray Hunt used to tell us a story. There's two old men sitting on a porch swing, and one fella says to the other, he says, "Boy, you've got real good judgment." The other fella says, "Yeah, that's great, thank you." He says, "Well, how'd you get such good judgment?" And the fella says, "Well, from experience." The first fella says, "Experience? Really? How'd you get experience?" He says, "Bad judgment." And then that's what it comes down to. I mean, I know I've kind of been knocked around and stepped on and tripped and kicked and bit, and I mean, name it, right? And I'm sure you've had, a lot of similar experiences too. Absolutely. And if not, I'm going to be jealous. So you better at least say you have. But, and we get more aware that way, and that's pretty important. So, I love it, Kelly. I think you're calling me out on that with the safety first. Colton made the comment, safety first. And if anybody has ridden with me or came and audited any clinics I've taught, you've probably heard me jokingly say, but not quite so jokingly, safety third. Okay. And I've got some people get a little bit, the pantyhose get tied in the knot when I say safety third, and I don't mean by any means that safety's third in importance. I mean that safety comes third in the equation. And I use the analogy a lot of times. If I was going to go learn to fly an airplane, it's my first day flying an airplane. I don't know anything about it. You want to come along on my first ride? He's trying to be nice, just smiling here. But he's not coming with me on my first ride flying an airplane because he knows I don't know squat about flying an airplane, right? So I have no understanding, right? So first I have to have understanding, right? Okay. If I don't have understanding, I am sure as hell not going to have safety, right? Once I have understanding, let's say I know, right? I read the book, I take the class. You going to come with me now? No, of course he's not going to go. See, he's trying to be nice. He's way nicer than I am. He's not going to come with me because he knows that I'm not a confident pilot, right? I might know it in my head, going back to Sheila's question about confidence, right?
Absolutely.
I might know in my head how to fly that airplane, but that doesn't mean that I'm confident with it. I might get up in the sky and submissively urinate, and then my plane's going down, right? I'm going to crash. So until I'm both understanding and confident, I'm not going to have safety, okay? I have to understand, I have to have confidence, and then safety comes in. It's safety third. We know lots of people that have understanding, and they don't have confidence, right? And so they're not safe, right? We know lots of people that have confidence, but they don't have understanding, right? That's like kind of, college guys at a party. Hey, Colton, hold my beer and watch this, right? It always ends bad. That's the idea of having confidence, kind of being cocky, but not having an understanding, not
Right.
kind of using your head. So, and I feel like it has to come in that order. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe somebody else knows a different order that's better. But I feel like you have to first have understanding. So understanding is first. Confidence is second. And only then does safety come in. Safety's third. That doesn't mean it's less important. I don't want anybody to take me wrong with that. You know, safety is very important.
That goes to the self-awareness that we were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're self-aware that you may not have the greatest understanding, or you're self-aware that you don't have the confidence, then you can work with yourself on improving those things. You know, that I had the opportunity to teach a couple lessons to a family who were really new to horses.
Okay.
And they came out and they're like, we want you to give us lessons on equine safety. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, can you explain to me what your experience is? Because I'm thinking, like, you know, is it under saddle? Is it just being around horses? And the wife and the daughter rode, but they were still they're in their first year. They were still very new. And the husband and the son would come to the barn, but they had no really much interest, but they were still going to be around going to horse shows. So they're like, we want you to teach us like the whole 9 yards on being safe around horses. And I'm like, okay. So I went back and I wrote down about 4 or 5 pages of notes, because I was like, well, how far deep does this go? Because maybe for somebody like you or I or anyone that owns horses and have them at their home and they're around them on a daily basis, some of the stuff we take for granted, that we're not really sure. And it was things of, you know, petting horses over the fence, you know, something so basic. Like, that was one of the things she brought up to me, and she's like, should we be doing this? And I was like, well, it got so detailed about how to turn horses out, what the expectations were, because some of these ponies, they didn't know, and it had been almost a year, and the wife of the daughter would go to lead them down the paddock, and they would just mow the grass the whole way down. It'd take them an hour to get to the paddock, and we laugh about it now because these folks, like, they kind of started reestablishing some things or some rules with these horses, but it was one of those things that when I had to go back and realize, like, where do I stand when I asked the horse to pick their feet up? And it was like, how's my body angled? I've been stepped on in the past and recently, and so where do I stand when I put the halter on? Like, and if somebody's doing this, just basic etiquette, if the farrier's around, like, am I allowed to, like, should we be leading horses past? And so it was building their self-awareness, but they also were like, okay, we know what we need to look for, but they were trying to go for all 3 steps at once. And so it was one of those things that, like you said, if we start to understand it, and the more we do it, we'll build that confidence. But that was a situation that I just really had to, like, dig deep, because it was the most minute details that we would do on a daily basis and not think much of it. That some people, that when you do have green folks around the barn, that you might need to really start to understand, put yourself in their shoes, because it is for their safety at the end of the day. So that was a neat experience. I've still got the notes on that one. It's kind of neat to look back and kind of see, like, this really does go really deep. So
and you know, you're absolutely right. There's so many of those things that we take them for granted, you know, because we experience that every day. We don't have to think about it, right? It just becomes so second nature. And yet that goes with the self-awareness, right? When things get too second nature, then we're not even paying attention, right? So we totally lack self-awareness. And then it can become something like texting and driving, you know? You kind of, you miss some of the important things. You miss what you're doing because it's too easy to get sidetracked, you know? So... awesome. All right, so that was all the questions that we had.
Answer Eddie's question?
We're gonna take a look here and see. It looks like, Colton, you've got quite a bit of conversation going on here, and I know I've got some things here. Let's see. I'm going to scroll down here and see what we have coming up. And let's see. Look at this. We got a question handed to us over a cell phone. So, question for the live Q&A coming from Eddie up in Columbus, Ohio. So he has a 4-year-old quarter horse that he started by himself with help from other horsemen. I ride almost daily, go to clinics and shows. When going to new places, she still seems unsure and spooky. Any thoughts on things I can do to help calm her or get her mind back on me? What can I do at home to prepare her for going other places? And what can I do at new places to keep her mind in working mode instead of on distractions? And I think, Eddie, if you're still in there with us, I think I might know this horse that he's showing, and she's an awesome little horse that he's doing a great job with, and just recently put her in the Hackamore, started riding her in the Hackamore. So yeah, so she's a lot of fun. So what are your thoughts on that? How does he keep her mind with him when he travels to new places?
Yeah, this is something I've definitely been working. I think I'm about to get bucked off here.
Don't get bucked off the sawdust bales.
Yeah. So this is something definitely, being here riding by myself, Eddie, I completely understand having to try to preempt some situations as best we can and prepare our horses for when we're not in an environment maybe that's as quiet or is just what their daily routine might be. So building some flexibility into our horses. And so I like routine. I want my horses to be flexible in that they can adapt. I don't ride them at the same times every day. You know, they don't get fed at the same times every day. I try to do that so that they understand, like, routine. Because if they get it catching on to routine, when it doesn't quite happen, they get a little cranky. So sometimes some of us might be that way. I know I like my routine, but so what I'd like to do with them is build a bit of a routine and basic understanding of what your expectations are for them. And so if you know what that mare knows really well, and so maybe you're working on something that's more advanced and you realize, hey, this isn't quite working, that you know what you can go back to that she understands. That way that when they do get worried in a new environment, you don't want them to lose confidence, because sometimes they might just be getting worried about everything else going around them, and you want it to be a positive experience. So I like to really know what that core foundation is, and being that you're moving up to the Hackamore, I'm sure you've got a real good handle and some basic exercise that you could say, hey, you know what this is. And so I've got that Appaloosa horse that's going to be going to some shows this year, and we're trying to best prepare for that. He's a stallion, so I'm turning other horses loose in the arena, and I'm riding and trying to push them around because there's going to be people schooling, and I don't have other people to ride with, but that's the best that I know right now to do, is to kind of preempt those situations. And when he does, I'll get to the point where I can try to ride up and rub on those other horses. But when he gets a little too excited and he's like, you know, to me it's like, I can't handle this, this is a little too much, then I have exercises that I can go back to and say, hey, you know, we've got a job, we're focusing, you and I are working on this together. And so when they do get to being that, like, really worried about something, you know, I'd look at it, are they nervous because of something else and that might need to be addressed, or, you know, do they kind of just need to let them sort it out? Sometimes, you know, we might just need to give them their head and say, hey, let's just go trot and canter around and let them kind of sort it out. You know, I feel like that's a very in the moment, but I like routine. I like to really know what my horse knows, so that if I feel like they are getting worried, that I can go back and build their confidence and say, hey, this isn't such a bad deal. So I think hopefully that didn't go too far off topic. Hopefully that helps, Eddie.
No, I think that sounds pretty good there. Yeah.
So I'd be interested to hear what you have.
Yeah, you know. I mean, and again, I feel like I'm just saying, yeah, ditto, yeah, what he said, you know. But yeah, you know, the being able to kind of throw the reins at them a little bit and trust them to say, hey, find your own. You know, I work a lot with the dressage horses, and they tend to get a little erratic in their tempo when they get nervous. All horses do, you know. They get looky, you know, and I'll say to those horses, maybe with a leg yield or maybe a turn on the forehand or something like that, I'll say, hey, kind of keep your eye on your own paper, right. You know, and then put them off to work. And then sometimes I like to steal a line from, I think, our mutual friend Craig Johnson. I like to steal a line from his book where he says, you thought that was hard? Try this, you know. So kind of increasing the expectation, right. You know, if we're doing something, whatever it is, say we're walking a circle, you know, we'll just use that as an example. But say we're walking that circle and the horse is, you know, being a tourist instead of an employee. we might increase it. We might say, well, maybe you need to work a little bit harder so that you can focus a little more. So maybe we're going to go strike a trot right now and work on a figure eight, or work on, you mentioned those Serpentines earlier, and we'll go back to those a million times.
Oh, yeah.
That I think it could be real helpful for a horse like that's kind of scattered. And again, we're talking once we get to the shows, it's about, sort of maybe increasing the work there. And then when the focus comes back to us, then we let them relax.
Make the right thing easy and the wrong thing difficult.
Exactly, so that they learn over time, hey, I get out in a new situation, and if I focus on, in this case, if Cielo says, if I focus on Eddie, I can relax, right? Whatever Eddie might have me do is the easiest thing I can do right now, because as soon as I look elsewhere, I'm going to be working harder.
Right.
I'm gonna have to be getting busier. And again, I'll steal a line from Charles DeCunfey's book. He made a comment at a clinic I got to catch with him, a dressage master, Charles DeCunfey. He says, the rider that has 30 minutes to ride and does not do 47 different exercises is a lazy rider. So kind of that idea of keep them busy, get them thinking, check in with them, make sure the brain and the body are coordinated. And it's like Ray used to tell us too, sometimes you've got to move the mind to get to the feet. 100%. Sometimes you got to move the feet to get to the mind.
Yep. And that's knowing your horse, I think. I've had plenty of horses that, sometimes they got so worried and they were just internally, they were shaking in their skin. So you're just like, hey, just hang out. Absolutely. You're all right. And I try, if I'm going to a show for the first time, I might get there the day before and then just take them out in the arena by themselves, and just get there early in the morning so they can just hang out and there's not a lot of traffic. And then all of a sudden, the next time they go to the arena, there might be quite a bit. And they didn't quite expect it, but it's just bite-sized pieces so that we can set them up for success the best we can. And sometimes you do have to kind of step up and move their feet a little bit more. And sometimes people might get worried that it's already not kind of going according to plan, and they're already not paying attention. So why would I have them not pay attention and go faster? Right. But you can still require them to pay attention. Just say, hey, you want to tune out? Let's go. Let's move your feet. And when you decide you want to tune back in and watch this channel, then we'll get back to the easy stuff. Exactly. Yeah, and like you said, you've got to know that horse, Absolutely. So maybe sometimes rather than getting faster in the work, we can still make it a little more difficult for them, or require a little more focus. Absolutely. I shouldn't say more difficult, but more focused maybe might be the right way to put it. More specific, with little things like, can you move your hind leg one step left? Right. We talked in a previous broadcast about the one-step exercise. Can you move a hind leg one step, and then can you move the front leg one step, and then can you change sides? Move a hind leg one step, move a front leg one step. Can you come backwards one step? Can you go completely left or right one step? Things like that. That'll really channel a horse's focus. And that's oftentimes for those scattered horses a little more difficult for them. Without being really physically demanding. And you wouldn't ask more of them than I wouldn't personally ask more of them in those moments than I would at home, because you don't want to kind of take them to the top of their education and really push them, because at that point, there's nothing wrong with, at some point we'll all have to take our horses to that next step and say, hey, this is where you're at and this is where we're going, and we do need to get there. But in those moments, I'd be saying, hey, we might make this a little more trial, like a little more difficult for you, but it's not going to be something that takes them to the top of their education. Right. And saying, because that will, I would, any of us would be worried if someone says, here's a new environment and I'm already not really wanting to participate, and you're asking me to do the most I've ever been asked to do. So I would, like you said, just take it in all steps and very proportional. So.
Yep, and I like I like the advice you gave about working the horse at home, turning the other horses loose and doing things like that. Again, just getting down to being very specific and helping that horse understand that there's a job, that they need to do. It might be a tiny job, it might be a little job we have to make up, but it's a job that those horses can focus on and can kind of own, and feel good about themselves for it.
Absolutely.
So, yep, awesome, gang. All right, so we hope that you've enjoyed this. I know I've had a ton of fun here with Colton down here in Kentucky. And what's the name of the farm again, Colton?
This is Meadow Haven Farm.
Meadow Haven Farm. Awesome.
So.
I love it. And word on the street says that, or has it, that Colton and I are going to be co-teaching a clinic here the weekend before 4th of July. So that's what, July
1st and 2nd.
1st and 2nd. Thank you. What are we going to be teaching?
You know, this is going to be a really neat clinic. We were just talking about it, and we're going to be really excited to do this. It's going to be, we're going to look at doing some ranch trail and really working on the ranch horse, as well as looking at potentially getting some cattle and doing a little cow work. And so for this area, it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got a beautiful farm out here, 200 acres, so we might be able to get out of the arena and work with some cattle and do some ranch trail and all that fun stuff. And maybe a little Western dressage for the folks that like to work on the dry work.
That's cool.
So we're gonna.
Awesome.
It's gonna be a cowboy weekend.
That sounds awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun. And gang, we're going to have more information about that clinic coming up here real soon. We're going to have that posted on the event page for the clinic. That's going to be a ton of fun.
Oh, it's gonna
so
be a blast.
we hope that we see you guys there. It's going to be open for auditors as well as riders, and we'll be taking registration for that here within the next few days, I would imagine.
Yeah.
We're going to have more information at least available for you within the next few days. Write it on your calendars. That's July 1st and 2nd. That's going to be a ton of fun. So, all right, gang. Again, thank you so much for checking in with us. This has been a lot of fun. I think you've had some fun with this.
Oh, I've loved it. Yeah, this is, I think, the third one I've done.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Good.
with the live, and you've done a couple.
Yeah, I've done a few. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think this is number 4 now. So
There you go.
Yeah,
this is
absolutely.
the live stuff's a lot of fun. So
It is.
You know, thanks guys for on both channels, on Patrick King Horsemanship's page and on my page, the Colton Woods Horsemanship. Thanks for joining us. It's been super fun to watch kind of the numbers, and the last comment on mine was said someone from Germany was tuning in. So Rebecca, thanks. I'm not
that's
sure
awesome.
what time it is there, but I can imagine it's probably getting kind of late. So that's
Very
pretty
cool.
neat. So
Very
guys, thanks
cool.
for joining us.
All right, gang. So again, the videos are going to stay up. I know Colton's going to upload his to his YouTube channel. I'm going to do the same so that these are available after we close the live broadcast. You'll be able to review them, send them to your friends, share them to your own personal pages, that sort of thing. Yeah, you know, and if you've got more questions, keep sending them in. You know,
Absolutely.
you keep sending in your questions, and we're just going to keep answering them, keep making more videos and doing these live broadcasts. Let us know what you thought about it. Did you have fun? Was it great? Did we do a good job? Are we stunningly handsome, like Ruth said? No, goodness, no. We don't want to hear that garbage. Just let us know what kind of questions you have, and we'll be doing some more videos. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah.
Great having you here with us.